I think he's rattled, and I think a 2 a.m. conference is a sign of really something's going on. And I'm sure today in Moscow there are lots of cars, helicopters, and people running around like headless chickens, thinking what to do. My baseline scenario, Philip, if I'm pressed in the corner to say what is going to happen, and I think the baseline scenario is based on what we kind of think will happen, is that Putin will not turn up. There may be a little bit of drama. He may be on his way to the airport and then the car crashes, or he's got a diarrhea, or he's got some sort of he ate a dodgy kebab or something. He's got a GP note to show that to Trump that he is really ill, or COVID.
Hello and welcome to Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. Now, today, as we look to tomorrow's meeting between President Zelensky and Vladimir Putin, a Russian representative, between Ukraine and Russia, and possibly Donald Trump appearing. Well, we'll look at some of the run-up to potential ceasefires, what's impacting on peace negotiations, and who better can we get to talk about this? But we're fortunate to talk to Professor Vlad Mykhnenko. Did I get that right, Vlad?
It's good. It's good enough for me, Philip.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, you're a Professor of Geography and Political Economy at the University of Oxford, Research Fellow in the Sustainable Urban Development at St Peter's College in Oxford, and you're a regular on Frontline, so welcome back.
Thank you, Philip. Really happy to be back.
It's good to have you. So the past few weeks, we've gone from President Zelensky's ambush by J.D. Vance and Donald Trump in the Oval Office to the iconic picture of Trump and Zelensky, almost heads bowed in the Vatican. And then we've got Starmer, Macron, Tusk, and Merz in Kyiv, and a plethora of ceasefire offers that have been bounced around in different areas, leading to Russia and Ukraine hopefully continuing to meet tomorrow in Turkey. Is President Zelensky proving his diplomatic and leadership skills and teaching the rest of the world how these things should be done?
I think so. I'm really excited. This is really exciting. 24 hours is going to be, because I can imagine, the media, everybody is really wondering, will he not? Will Vladimir Putin, live up to the challenge that Zelensky put up? Come to Istanbul face to face. Let's talk, or not. There's lots of speculation, of course, and it is quite exciting moment. I think the things are moving fast, which is probably a good thing.
Do you think it's right and proper that President Zelensky turns around and says, "I will only speak to President Putin," and continue the pressure on him? Because it seems that President Zelensky's got the initiative at the moment. He's trying to dictate the pace, which is something that after that Oval Office debacle, we thought wouldn't happen again.
Correct. The last time they've met, Putin and Zelensky, that was in 2019 in Paris, under the auspices of President Macron, and that was a disastrous meeting.
A very young-looking Zelensky, then.
A very just selected Zelensky, who thought actually that he could also charm Russians, and he could charm Putin and do a quick deal, stop the fire, and the peace will come. And I think both of them were kind of disappointed, but President Putin was more disappointed then, because he came with a deal. They came with a particular capitulation deal, which they thought President Zelensky would sign, and he didn't sign it, and it was a huge scandal there back in Paris. So I think Vladimir Putin will be worried about these encounters. He doesn't really debate well, as we all know. He doesn't debate, and he never debated anyone over 25 years of his career. His stage press conferences, meeting with the press, are all very well orchestrated, with everybody knowing what to say, and the answers already well written. So being quick on his feet is not his best strength. And I've noticed, Philip, that the more you see his meetings, which are not scripted, which are not those big press conference when he's probably drugged up, when he's actually not drugged up, he starts to mumble, he mispronounces long words, he loses train of thought, which probably are signs of aging. So I don't. He's not as sharp as he was 25 years ago, and hence I will be very, very surprised if he turns up in Istanbul tomorrow.
So showing a few traits that we saw with Joe Biden, and looking at that. But do you think Putin's actually been backed into a corner? Clearly, after the Schultz, Macron, Merz, and Tusk the statement that they came out with after they're going to Kyiv. Putin then calling this midnight press conference for the international press that he was, I think, 2 hours.
At 2 a.m.
Yeah, well, 2 hours late for. He didn't turn up in time for his own press conference. But that had never happened before. Is this a sign of Putin really panicking because he is backed into a corner?
I think he's rattled, and I think a 2 a.m. conference is a sign of really something's going on. And I'm sure today in Moscow there are lots of cars, helicopters, and people running around like headless chickens, thinking what to do. My baseline scenario, Philip, if I'm pressed in the corner to say what is going to happen, and I think the baseline scenario is based on what we kind of think will happen, is that Putin will not turn up. There may be a little bit of drama. He may be on his way to the airport and then the car crashes, or he's got a diarrhea, or he's got some sort of he ate a dodgy kebab or something. He's got a GP note to show that to Trump that he is really ill, or COVID, or
The Excuse Book, Volume 2, Chapter 3, Excuses 1 to 5.
exactly. A flight leaves Moscow, but then lands in emergency landing in Sochi, but doesn't reach Istanbul. I think that there could be a little bit of drama, but he won't turn up. Obviously, Trump will say that's not a good thing, but will not do anything to press the Russians. The Europeans might start to think about stronger sanctions and maybe a little bit more steps on coalition of the willing. Then Hungary and Slovakia will start to put, throw sands into the wheel. Then Europeans will take probably 3 months to decide how to overcome the Hungarian or Slovak veto. The the war goes on, and then we come to probably September, October, 5 months from now, and then when the Russians understand that the advance is not going well, and they moved on a little bit, captured maybe Konstantinivka, maybe moved to Drushkivka, maybe encircling Kramatorsk, but that's about it. And maybe then 5 months from now they will say, well, probably let's have a little ceasefire. That's my baseline scenario.
Well, I've been intrigued in your thoughts because yesterday I read reports to say that the Russians had nominated Medvedev as the head of the negotiating team, but had deliberately, and still today are deliberately not saying whether Putin's going to turn up. But do you think by putting his name in the ring as the leader, they're making an interesting statement?
They're making. I mean, if this is true, Philip, this is going to be even a better TV, as they say. Well, it's intriguing. Donald Trump famously doesn't drink, and Dmitry Medvedev infamously does drink. And so it would be an interesting encounter after a long flight from Moscow to Istanbul. What will happen to the deputy head of the National Security Council? I think Medvedev is still holding that position. Medvedev is probably a slightly more serious figure than Medinsky, who was the Minister of Culture, who was leading the previous conversations in Istanbul in 2022. That is correct. But he's even more full-mouthed than Lavrov, right? The foreign minister of Russia, who is famously talking about Nazis all the time. So I think Medvedev is kind of up the notch a little on that leg. So if they're bringing Lavrov and Medvedev, that is going to be just a shout match, and that's obviously not a serious negotiation.
Yeah, but Medvedev seems to keep loving to threaten nuclear reaction to everything that's going on, and his relationship with Putin, he's one of his puppies.
Correct, and also a horrible family situation as well. So maybe that's leads to drinking. I don't know. But it's obviously I'll be extremely surprised, Philip, if they send Medvedev. That is kind of throwing a gauntlet to the West.
So the initial indicators are Turkey is it might start something that will lead to other things, but we're not going to get anything groundbreaking out of any negotiations tomorrow. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, yes. However, I mean, we still need to leave a little bit of chance if the Russian elites, who are obviously wanting a ceasefire, who want this to stop, if they really press now Putin to do something. So there is a little chance that from different corners of the Kremlin, people will come up and say, "Well, listen, you need to go, and maybe we can do a bit of a deal," because the situation on the one hand is not catastrophic, but it's not great. It's not looking great. They've run out of effectively, they've run out of money. the normal money. Okay, they got a lot of other money. They've got yuan, you've got gold, you have billions and billions of Russian savings, which they can tap into. But from normal kind of budget, they're now running effectively a budget deficit 4 times faster than they should have. They've spent the budget, but they spent the budget already in the first 3 months, which they supposed to spend until the end of the year. The Russian sovereign wealth fund is empty of cash. So effectively, now they're in a moment of drastic measures. Whether they're going to tap into the Russian savings, whether they're going to declare some kind of economic emergency. So this is the moment when actually things are starting to look quite serious. And probably, the economic and business elites would say, well, this is, doesn't look too good now. Maybe a good time to stop. But obviously, it never stopped Putin before. So I'm sure there is a lot of negotiations in the Kremlin right now.
But we keep hearing about people saying that the Russian economy is in a bad position, and Russia's economy is tiny compared to even that of the EU. The EU's 100 times stronger than Russia. But Russia seems to keep being able to afford your huge military capability and what it's doing. How do you think they're managing to sustain these sort of operations from an economic perspective? And again, from an economic position, what's the reality in Russia today? And then what's the reality in Ukraine? Because Ukraine must be feeling a lot of pain as well, even though it's getting support from the likes of the EU and the United States. But it can't be easy.
So the Russians spent the first 3 years of developing a quite expensive volunteering scheme for people to join up their army and to fight in Ukraine, with really extremely high bonuses of 30, 40, 50,000 pounds up front, plus quite high level of payments if you're wounded or dead, and hence that's been a major incentive for people to join up. I think yesterday, 2 days before, President Putin said that 65,000 people are joining up every month. If you combine, if you multiply that 12 times, they've only run out of 3 armies over the last 3 years. So the question, where where are they ending up? All these 65,000 a month. About 22% of people in Russia gained. They're richer now than they were 3 years ago. So there is a significant proportion of population who are actually not enjoying but benefiting from the war. They're not just the soldiers and their wives and their families, but also, of course, the military industrial complex and the generals and also people supplying them, but also the Russian elite who are under sanctions and under the embargo from Western goods are enjoying incredible monopoly profits, right? You can charge whatever you want because there is no competition at all. And so 20%, 22% of people are quite happy with this, which is a significant amount of people. On the other hand, of course, they're starting cutting into the social sphere, pensions, salaries, cutting on healthcare, on all the normal things. We've seen this spectacular, disastrous infrastructure, shocking events blowing up. The pipes, the water pipes, sewage pipes, everywhere is blowing up. People have no water, no heating. You have dams which are collapsing because they're made up of nothing, just corruption. So in terms of social infrastructure and the basic housing and all that is all in horrible conditions because all the money is going now to the front line. And I think currently they are building more and more inflationary pressures because effectively, as they run out of money, they're going to print the money, to put it bluntly, and that will also put the inflation up. And you can see all this prices from the Russian supermarkets is crazy prices, even for the Russian produced goods. Potatoes up, 70%. The basic things are extremely expensive. Eggs, so butter, right? Butter thieves are rampant. Do not steal sausages because we catch 3 people every day. I saw a supermarket sign in somewhere in Voronezh. So on the one hand, you have people benefiting. On the other hand, everything is quite creaking up. So I think this is exactly the moment when he might go for the last hooray, kind of let's go until October. Let's throw in everything, and then we'll see what happens. Although I would say that is quite a risky strategy, and probably people around Putin will say, well, maybe we shouldn't risk the last, everything. We're already running out of weapons. People are driving motorcycles, donkeys, horses, running around on foot. So interesting times.
Yeah, very interesting times, and the heart of Russian politics, is the corrupt nature of the oligarch network that underpins everything. But going back to old Soviet days, that same oligarch network underpinned politics inside Ukraine, and one of the things that has come out since President Zelensky came in, he came in on an anti-corruption ticket and started to try and deal with all of the issues that there were there. But we're still seeing the accusations coming out of pro-Kremlin brigades, whether they be Moscow-based or St. Petersburg-based, or whether they be Washington-based or elsewhere, that are suggesting that a lot of the Western money that is being given to Ukraine is actually being abused by different corrupt networks. Has President Zelensky managed to get a lot of the corruption at what was at the core of Ukrainian government, quite a few years ago? Has he managed to deal with that, and is he continuing to deal with it to bring Ukraine back, away from old Soviet style criminal underpinning through to more Western style? Different way of doing it. I'll not say there isn't corruption in Western politics, because, as you know well, of course there is in all politics, but it's different. It seems to be more acceptable.
Yes, more acceptable to issue a Bitcoin with your own name just before you become a president, or your wife's name, or it's more acceptable to tell your friends you're going to impose tariffs, and then they trade on stock, and then you can see crazy stock market movements, and people are getting rich. As Donald Trump said, lots of his friends became extremely rich over the last couple of months. Not to mention, of course, gifts of 400 million of a fantastic jet plane from Qatar, which is going directly to Donald Trump's private possession after he finishes the office. So yes, it is.
Yeah, from a
It is.
security perspective, I can never see that being used as Air Force One. Oh my goodness! Yeah, I reckon it would cost 50 to $100 million just to run the security checks on it, and even that's probably an underestimate.
Yeah. So then you put Pete Hegseth into it. That'll be another interesting story. Well, President Zelensky came in with the anti-oligarch actual platform, to be precise, and then he had a law that they named people who own have more than one, I think 1 million hryvnia actually, to be oligarchs. So actually, any rich person is declared as an oligarch, and that means that any rich person cannot own TV station, radio station, or newspaper. That was the first move, and then they tried to actually curtail all the other networks of power from the so-called oligarchs. And the two largest people in Ukraine, whom I'm not going to name because everybody knows who they are, they've been very, very helpful in the since the last 3 years. Both the System Capital Management Company and also Interpipe Company have, and their and their owners have been quite, spending quite a lot of money, put it bluntly, on the war effort. A lot of donations, billions and billions, and very effective things they've done. So the two remaining most powerful people in Ukraine, apart from obviously politicians, have been very patriotic and helping the war effort. Not everybody has done that, I need to say, and a lot of them are quiet or run away. So it's you know situation is not as black and white as critics portray. Obviously, there are some mundane corruption things happening every day. However, we need to say that after 3 years of allegations of armaments been sold and of billions been stolen, not a single Stinger or HIMARS or even Javelin has been found in any conflict anywhere else. And not a single penny of American money has been stolen, because Americans put a general inspector just walking around Kiev just looking for this. So there's been quite a lot of Western pressure on checking that the money is spent very well. And to be honest with you, Philip, the Western money comes to cover pensions and salaries, and all the Ukrainian budget, all the Ukrainian money comes to the war effort. So it's actually quite a clear division. So Ukrainians can only spend money that they have. To be another way around, the Western money can never be spent on the war, and the Ukrainian money then has to be spent on the war. So Ukrainian budgets consist of two things: the war and non-war. The non-war comes from US, UK, EU, and other Japan and other member states, and that's your stuff you need to pay. And I must say, my mother is still getting pension, my father getting pension, and they never complained. So those money somehow do come to the targeted audiences. and soldiers on the front line do still receive stuff that they need to receive, salaries, etc., and payments. So it looks like from the outputs of this system, outputs have been delivered.
I think people in the West forget about the fact that whenever money is allocated for weapons for Ukraine, actually it's not cash that's given to President Zelensky that he then goes out to eBay for armaments around the world and buys some stuff. It's actually spent by the government that's donating the money in their own country. So in the United States, it's spent in the United States industry to build armored vehicles or artillery shells or rockets in the United States and employ Americans, and then those goods are sent to Ukraine, and the goods just happen to be weapons. And there's a value attached to them, and people go, "Oh, Ukraine's been given billions of dollars." Still, actually, no, that's self-investment back into, and that's why U.S. economy is doing well. And again, I think and do you agree that Europe has suddenly woken up to the fact that you investing in defence and using what's going on and the instability around the world, it can be good to help underpin different democracies at a time whenever other economic measures are putting pressures on things like the automobile industry and everything else?
Well, just the basic maths, Philip. The latest assessment of the damage and the recovery needs of Ukraine, that done by the World Bank and other institutions, runs to $526 billion. Right, this is what is necessary to rebuild Ukraine as it now stands. That's the damage already been done. So compare this to the aid that Ukraine received, which is a much smaller amount of time. So the basic math is that you need to invest in defense, which will be cheaper to avoid 526 billion of damage, right? Not to, this is just buildings. It's not about humans, right? It's not about the life of humans. If you add humans into it and losses of wounded soldiers and wounded civilians, I mean, the figure will be into trillions. So investing in defense is preventing the trillions of wasteless and horrible spending that you need to do later on. I think that's just quite a clear and an obvious thing to do. It's just we have forgotten it because the Second World War was so far away and we've forgotten how it was. But this is the clear mass, is that defense is cheaper than recovery and reconstruction afterwards.
Yeah, well, it seems as if some governments are beginning to wake up to this across not just Europe, but the rest of the world. We'll see what comes in there. Russia's having real difficulty in its defense industrial base, quite clearly, because it seems to be reliant on North Korea for ammunition. And as a former military man, there's no way would I stand anywhere near an artillery piece with a North Korean shell in it, and even a very long lanyard. I'd want to be several kilometers away because the chances of it going off properly are remote. But we've got Russia's reliance on North Korea. We've got China's influence in inside Russia, and what's China getting out of it? We've got Iran supplying capability. What's Iran getting out of it? And are there other economic partners that we should be watching? For example, India with the way it's buying Russian oil products and other things. How reliant is Russia on all of these relationships? And how do we influence them? Can we influence them through those countries? Is there a way of influencing them through the Russian oligarch network or something else? There must be a way of us you're getting in and trying to force these hands to move away from support for Russia.
Yes, correct. All the countries you named have benefited quite a lot, primarily from getting very cheap Russian oil and gas supplies. No, we're getting Indian oil in Britain, and that's not Indian oil because there is no oil in India, right? So we're buying effectively mixed Russian Gulf mix mixed in India and brought to us as petrol. So these countries have to be dealt directly. I don't think there is any other kind of other way of influencing it because these decisions that are made at the highest level, at the leadership level. Yes, it is. Without those friends, I don't think Russian war machine would have run so smoothly until now. Although it's not running too smoothly, given that I think the latest official statistic of Russian GDP growth is zero, which means that the military one is going up and the civilian one is declining and shrinking, and the average is zero. Ukrainian GDP projection for this year is 3.3% of growth, which is comparing that both of them are war economies. One of them is doing better than the other, which is probably a good thing. Also, a great initiative that the Danish government have developed. Is the so-called Danish initiative, in which effectively the assistance, the billions that they provide to Ukraine, are given to Ukrainian military-industrial complex itself as an order for new deliveries of weapons. So there is a homegrown big Ukrainian defense industry that's been effectively given the demand is driven by Western powers to produce goods for Ukrainian army itself, and that has propped up quite a lot of economic activity in Ukraine. Very new activities across really places you never heard of, with massive factories producing drones and on all other types of equipment. Not all of it is good, but this is quite a brand new thing. And if North Koreans have been producing shells for 50 years and still haven't got the clue what to do with them, I think having some mines not blowing well after a year or two of production probably is not such a huge scandal. Although there's been a scandal with the 82 millimeter mines, as we've all seen it. So I think the Ukrainian economy is stable in a way that our economy could be, as long as the Western funds flow in for the social assistance, social security, welfare, education, all the normal things that people do. Then the society can function.
But we've seen Trump yesterday came out with, or was it through last night, saying $142 billion arms deal in Saudi Arabia as part of $600 billion investment from Saudi into the United States. But we're then hearing growth in European defense industry. We're hearing the UK talking about growth in UK defense industry. We're hearing Japan coming out and being more vocal in the growth of its defense industry. South Korea is supplying lots of kit into Poland and building up enormously. And then one of the things that Saudi Arabia seems to be getting out of the United States is help in development of nuclear power technology, which, and we all know nuclear power technology, especially in the Middle East, can lead to what you need for nuclear weapons and everything else. Are we beginning to see this restart of a global arms race, and included in that a global nuclear arms race, or certainly the green shoots of it?
Oh, absolutely. I 100% agree with your assessment, Philip. We are seeing it. It is happening. And obviously, the US withdrawal from the global stage, as they try to orchestrate, although it's not working that well, because you can retire as a global power, as famously once person said. That provokes insecurity, vulnerability, and countries like South Korea, countries like Poland, right, Saudi Arabia are looking at other deterrents, which are not the U.S. power. And I don't know how what's the calculus between developing a nuclear weapon versus subsidizing American foreign bases. I mean, that's beyond my calculation, but I'm sure people are calculating what will be the most cost-effective way of protecting yourself. This is it's a horrible concession to have in 2025, given that we are already 1.3% up to Celsius in climate change terms, and the world is going to burn, yet as we are discussing how to rearm ourselves. But I'm afraid, with the leadership across various countries not far from us, we've got to defend ourselves. And that's, as I said, the calculus there is very simple. You've got to invest in defense to prevent the losses of human life and damage to infrastructure and everything else, and destruction of human life, really. So that's the basic.
Are you worried that we could be on a path to European conflict, or worse still, a path to global conflict? Because climate change, we're not going to be bothered about if we're going to fry ourselves in nuclear exchanges in the future.
Correct. I think unless and until Vladimir Putin is removed from power, we are on the way to more wars. That's absolutely true. He started with a war. He's finishing with a war. There were wars in between. There was, he came with a war in 1999 with the First Chechen War, then Second Chechen War, then we had war in Georgia and Ossetia, and then we have Abkhazia, and then we have Transnistria, and then we had, not in a particular chronological order, then we have Crimea, and then we have Ukraine now. So continuously wars and wars, a bit like Saddam Hussein, if you remember those days, right? Dictators have that particular dictators have that particular shtick with wars, and so I think until and unless Vladimir Putin is removed from power, one way or another, we should be preparing for the war. Absolutely.
Well, let's hope the US team that are going to Turkey to observe what's going on are listening to this today whenever it goes out, and that'll help set the conditions for their support for the negotiations and the outcome from that tomorrow. But Vlad, on that, was it a depressing point? No, realistic point, I think. Thank you very much indeed for chatting to me once again on Frontline.
Thank you, Philip. It's my pleasure.
You've been watching Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. If you'd like to be amongst the first to get exclusive content, please subscribe to Times Radio membership at the link below. You can also listen to Times Radio for the latest updates on global affairs or read about them at thetimes.com. Thank you.